Welcome to the deep dive. We're your express lane to getting instantly well-informed without digging through piles of text yourself. Today, we're jumping right into Chapter 13 of the official SAT study guide, our mission. Really unpack those sample writing and language test questions. We want to pull out the most crucial nuggets, maybe some surprising facts about how the test works, and the practical strategies, all straight from the official source. So this is basically your shortcut to getting the section down fast. And speaking of surprising facts, did you realize that the no change option, the one where the original text is actually the best, well, it's the right answer a lot more often than people think?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe like 25% of the time. That alone, that statistic, it can really change how you approach this whole section.
It really can, yeah. It shows that the SAT writing and language test isn't just about finding mistakes. It's about spotting the best way to write something. The big goal here is making passages clear, concise, and logically organized. You got 44 questions crammed into just 35 minutes. So understanding the test's rhythm, the question types, that's really crucial for working efficiently.
Okay, let's unpack that mission a bit more then. The guide, it's pretty clear the main purpose is kind of twofold, right? You're revising to make the ideas clear, better expressed, and at the same time, you're fixing errors, things like sentence structure, usage, punctuation. It's less like being a grammar police officer
Right.
and more like being a really sharp editor.
Exactly. A brilliant editor, that's a good way to put it. And the test actually breaks this down formally into two main kinds of questions. First, you've got expression of ideas. This is where we really look at your writer's skill, content, the overall structure, using language effectively for a specific reason. How does an argument flow? How do you make a point really, really clear?
Yeah.
Then the second type is standard English conventions. This is more the traditional stuff, grammar rules, usage, punctuation. But even here, it's still about making the writing better, not just like mechanically correct according to some rule book.
Gotcha. And the format itself, you mentioned traps, often it points you to something underlined.
Yeah,
But sometimes the question is about the whole passage. That means you can't just zero in, you need the bigger picture.
exactly.
And that no change option we talked about, people often forget it, but it's always there reminding you, hey, maybe the original is actually the strongest pick.
That's such a critical reminder for test day. And the official guide, it gives these remember tips, like the passages are usually 400, 450 words long. But the really key thing is many questions need you to think about the whole paragraph or sometimes the whole passage for context. Just skimming, that won't work. You really need to get the main idea, the flow. And here's a super practical tip from the guide. Use satpractice.org. Practice reading all the directions carefully before test day. Do that enough times and you won't waste precious seconds reading them when the clock is ticking. It sounds small, but under pressure makes a huge difference.
That is excellent practical advice. Okay, speaking of practice, let's look at some real examples, straight from the guide. We'll start with sample one. It's a careers passage with graphic called A Life in Traffic. And it actually includes a chart, which is, a key feature sometimes. So we need to see how that data fits in. Think of this as us kind of uncovering the SAT's playbook, one question at a time.
Yeah, and what's really cool is how the guide explains the why, the objective behind each right answer. We can actually group these skills, see the SAT strategy. Okay, let's start with what I think of as sentence structure savvy. The SAT really cares about how well you build clear, solid sentences. So for question one, they're checking your ear for style consistency. The big rule here. Figure out the pattern they've set up, verb forms, sentence structure, maybe even the tone, and pick the answer that keeps that rhythm going. Anything that sounds, jarring or just off, probably wrong. It's like keeping the same beat in music.
Right, making sure the words flow together smoothly. What about parallel structure? That one always seems to trip people up.
Oh, absolutely. That links right into question three, which is all about parallel structure. This just means making sure items in a list or things being compared are grammatically the same. The example in the passage uses a list of actions: evaluating, assessing, and improving.
Yeah.
See how they all end in X. The right answer keeps that ing form going, keeps it balanced. Easy to read, like lining up your ducks, If one's facing backwards, it just looks off. And another big one in this area is question 10. That one looks at coordination and subordination, basically how you connect different parts of a sentence, different clauses. Students often create run-ons or use commas incorrectly, making comma splices. The test wants the option that makes a clear, well-formed sentence, linking ideas logically, not just kind of smashing them together.
Okay, that makes total sense. Consistency, clear connections. What about word choice and how words relate to each other?
Great question. That moves us into conventions and clarity. Question 2, for instance, tests pronoun antecedent agreement. Simply put, a pronoun like it or they needs to match the noun. It refers back to its antecedent in number. So if you're talking about changes, which is plural,
You can't use...
exactly, you can't refer to them as it, which is singular. It's all about avoiding confusion for the reader. Then you have question 6, focusing on economy of expression. This is about cutting out wordiness, redundancy. The best writing is often the most direct, most concise. If you can say it in fewer words without losing the meaning, that's almost always the way to go on the SAT. Every word needs to pull its weight.
That feels like a good writing rule for life, not just the SAT. Okay, now let's shift to the flow. How ideas connect. It's not just what you say, but how you guide the reader, right?
Precisely. And that's where organization and flow comes into play. Question 4 and question 7 are both about picking the most effective transition. These words, however, therefore, for instance, furthermore, similarly, they're like road signs. They tell the reader the relationship between ideas. Is it a contrast, a result, an example, an addition, a comparison? You have to choose the word or phrase that truly fits the logic connecting what came before to what comes next. The biggest trap here, picking a transition that sounds smart but doesn't actually match the logical connection.
So it's about the right tool for the job, even if it's just one little word. And sometimes maybe the best move is just to cut something out entirely.
Exactly right. That's question 8, which is about development. Specifically, deciding whether to keep or delete some piece of information. The goal is to see if a sentence really supports the main point, or if it actually kind of muddies the water, weakens the focus of that paragraph. If a sentence isn't pulling its weight, isn't contributing meaningfully, often deleting it makes the paragraph stronger, more cohesive. You have to be a bit ruthless sometimes. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Question 11. This one focuses on development too, but specifically integrating data from a graph.
The graphic one.
Yeah, this is cool because it blends reading comprehension with, like, analytical skills.
Yeah.
The right answer has to accurately reflect the specific data points. For example, the projected 16% job growth for urban planners between 2010 and 2020. You need to be super precise with those numbers. If it says 15% in an answer choice, wrong. It really tests if you can connect the words on the page with the visual information accurately.
That's a fantastic breakdown of that first sample passage. It really shows the variety. Okay, let's switch gears to the second passage. Dong King-min, painter of cities. This one's humanities-focused. It shows these writing skills matter everywhere, not just in career or science passages.
Absolutely. And thinking bigger picture, these skills aren't just for writing reports. They're for crafting compelling stories.
Yeah.
Even about art history. Let's dig into some more of the subtle points, especially grammar details. We can talk about punctuation power-up. This is always a big one. Back in the first passage, question 5 and question 9 dealt with possessives, like using apostrophes correctly and also distinguishing essential versus non-essential information.
Right, the comma rules for extra info.
Exactly. A restrictive element is vital, no commas. A non-essential one just adds extra detail, gets set off by commas. Think of commas as little pauses for the reader. Then, in this second passage, question 14 hits the correct use of a colon. A colon signals a strong break inside a sentence. It often introduces an explanation or maybe a list, but crucially, it has to follow a complete thought, a full sentence.
Okay.
And question 19 circles back to separating items in a series with commas. Just fundamental clarity for lists. The SAT wants to see you apply that rule correctly in context.
Got it. That punctuation thread runs through the whole test. What about trickier things like verb tenses changing or how we compare things?
Good ones. Question 12 is about spotting and fixing awkward shifts in verb tense or mood. You might see choices like watched versus had watched versus would watch. The key is consistency with the story's timeline. If it's mostly past tense, stick with that unless there's a clear reason to shift, like talking about something that happened even earlier.
Keep the time travel consistent.
Exactly. Keep the verbs on the right timeline. Then question 15, that's conventions of usage, specifically making correct comparisons using like and as. The rule is actually pretty simple. Compare things or nouns using like, he paints like Kingman. Compare actions or clauses using as, he paints as Kingman did. The things being compared need to be grammatically similar. And closely related to that precision is question 16. This is effective language use, choosing the most contextually appropriate word. Words like evacuated, departed, retired. They might seem similar in a dictionary, but only one really fits the specific nuance, the feeling of the passage.
The connotation.
Precisely. The SAT tests, if you can pick the word that isn't just technically correct, but the most right word for that specific spot, it's about those shades of meaning.
Okay, so it's not just what a word means, but how it feels in that sentence. All right, let's wrap up with the big picture stuff, passage structure, overall purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So question 17 in the second passage deals with improving paragraph cohesion and finding the logical placement for a sentence. You have to analyze. Where does this sentence fit best? Does it introduce the idea? Does it elaborate? Does it conclude? It's about making the paragraph flow smoothly. Then, question 18 is about development, specifically identifying the main topic sentence of a paragraph. The right answer here clearly sets up the central idea that the rest of the paragraph will explore. It's like the paragraph's signpost.
Okay.
And that connects to question 20, which is about using information to support a specific writing goal. The best answer choice strengthens the writer's point or adds relevant detail. Wrong answers might weaken it or be off topic. Question 21 looks at effective language use again, but this time focusing on combining sentences efficiently. How do you make the writing more concise, maybe more sophisticated? The best answer often uses things like participles, maybe starting a phrase with describing, to blend shorter, maybe choppy sentences into one clear, logical thought, making sentences work smarter.
Smarter, not harder. I like that.
And finally, question 22. This is an organization question about picking the most effective ending for the whole passage, given what the writer was trying to achieve. The conclusion should wrap things up effectively, maybe summarize, offer a final thought, achieve that overall goal. It needs to feel like a natural, satisfying finish.
Wow. Okay, so what does all this mean for you listening in? We have just gone deep into Chapter 13 of the official SAT study guide. We've covered this huge range of skills, haven't we? From tiny punctuation details and grammar rules, all the way up to big picture stuff like organizing paragraphs, expressing ideas clearly, developing arguments coherently. By really understanding these specific question types, the skills they're actually testing, and the strategies we've talked about, you can definitely walk into the SAT writing and language test feeling much more confident.
And it's really so much more than just a test, isn't it? These aren't just, SAT skills. They're fundamental pieces of communicating effectively, thinking critically, really, in any situation. Which brings up, I think, an important question for you to think about. How might getting good at these skills not only help you nail the SAT, but also make you a clearer, maybe more persuasive communicator out there in a world just flooded with information?
That is a great thought to chew on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the SAT writing and language test. We have truly, comprehensively covered this entire chapter from the official SAT study guide. No skill, no strategy, no question type, no official tip left behind. You are now officially, instantly well-informed.